Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments on bicycle travel adventures. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/410. You can email the show pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 410th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. On this edition, it is the takeaways of the 2025 Lake Ontario adventure. And let's break this down a little bit. 6 days, 2 countries, multiple ferries, and one very stubborn e-bike brake magnet later, the Lake Ontario circumnavigation attempt has wrapped up in ways both expected and completely unforeseen. What started as an ambitious 540-mile loop around one of the Great Lakes became a masterclass in adventure adaptation, international border logistics, and the reality of shoulder season touring. On this episode, takeaways from a trip that delivered lessons extending far beyond the original route plan. What a trip. It obviously was not, and I repeat, not what I intended, which, by the way, preview, the next one's just like that too. So if you all like things going sideways, 2025 is the year for you. There's your preview for the next adventure, which you don't even know about yet. Let's go through these. I got 10 takeaways and a bonus insight as well for this particular adventure. Number 1, plan for ferry contingencies. You thought it was going to be the e-bike first. No, it's the ferry. I think that was the thing that could have been the biggest absolute disaster had the first disaster not happened. Ferry schedules can be unreliable, especially early or late in the season. Here's the thing. I didn't think it was early in the season. I thought it was just fine. That ferry between the U.S. and Canada that it was supposed to be on after Memorial Day weekend just wasn't up and running yet. In fact, I haven't even looked to see if it's up and running yet here as I'm recording this 2 months later, which is crazy. I should probably do that. It really would have been a disaster of epic proportions because had the TikTok of the trip gone the way that I think it would have, I would have been in a hotel room in Oswego, New York, looking ahead to the next day and going, oh, I wonder what the ferry schedule is. Looked it up and found that it was closed. And then realized after doing some frantic research that I really didn't have any kind of an option that probably would have worked. The only thing I can think of that might have been possible would have maybe been either a train or a one-way car rental, but the international aspect of getting into Canada, I think, would have created problems. It would have potentially scuttled the whole thing. And as I mentioned in the line of the show, I think what I probably would have ended up doing if I hadn't found a reasonable alternative, I literally would have turned right around and gone back and gotten my car and done the exact same thing that I ended up doing. And that would have been, I think, even more of a record scratch, quite frankly, when all was said and done. So look at the ferry schedules and those things that you think are absolutely running. And when they're not, just be ready for it and have contingencies in place. It's a real problem for doing this ride if that ferry doesn't exist. It would require an additional couple of days, and I haven't even researched how to go around even further to the east, up and around. It's a big question mark, but that ferry looks pretty cool. It's very short. It's amazing that it exists, except when it doesn't. Number 2. The thing that you probably were thinking would be number 1, e-bike mechanical knowledge is essential. The whole thing ended nearly before it began because of one really simple thing. And Biking Brian, by the way, did a comment on one of the early videos, or excuse me, the YouTube version of this. By the way, I'm on YouTube with these things. They're not video typically. Brian identified it almost straight away that it was probably one of those magnet situations. And it took me a full day to figure it out. And I'm really glad that I did. But it's one of those things that it was a real aha moment when I remembered it. And it's such a simple thing, and it's a safety thing, why that exists. So I think that the takeaway here is if you're planning to do a tour with any kind of an e-bike, invest the time in learning all of the components of everything that's going on, including the failure points. I think that the one thing that I'm definitely going to do is I'm either going to replace this braking system that I have right now with one that is hardwired in to have that kill switch, or I'm going to make sure I'm carrying extra magnets with me. I always carry electrical tape. I always carry basic tools with me as well. In the show notes, I say basic electrical tools. It's not really an electric thing so much. It was a magnetic sensor, and a very simple one, and it's very elegant, except when your magnet slips off and you have no ability to get your e-assist because the magnet is gone and the kill switch is on. It all should have been really obvious to me, but it had been just long enough since I built the bike and since I experienced how finicky those things are and how close they have to be to stop the kill switch that I was just not in the headspace. And yeah, so make sure you know your e-bike. That's a really important thing, and have some mechanical knowledge on it. I've got it just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to not freak out in the moment. So there you go. You heard all about it. Number 3, weight distribution matters more on e-bikes. The combination of heavy batteries, I had 2 of them, chargers, touring gear, everything like that, made me realize, even though I never really carried all of it at once, that the wheel integrity on a bike that I built on is a real question mark. And I really have to wonder if that would have been a thing had I actually ridden this bike this way. And it's got me really rethinking 2 things. Number 1, weight and what I can do to radically reduce the weight. And number 2, is this really the right bike? Or do I need to do something to get a new rear wheel? Or is it possible that I should abandon this reasonably inexpensive bike and put this motor on something different going forward? That's not a this year thing, but it might be a this winter thing. But I do think that the weight distribution situation is problematic. And again, I keep citing Biking Brian because he's my Jedi on all this. He's my Obi-Wan. He's got weight distributed on front panniers. And that, I think, might not be a terrible idea. He had suggested that some front suspension would be really good. I need to maybe figure out, I may need to really put some extra thought into whether this particular bike is the right bike, which means it could be N+1 time for a new bike. Just never know. It's a perfectly fine bike. As a mountain bike, I think it's actually okay. I'm now questioning with my grand ideas of a double battery situation and 100-mile days, whether or not this would have even worked. I feel like that I could have popped a spoke super easy on that rear tire. There's a lot going on. Didn't run into it because of what ended up happening, but weight distribution matters. That's my 3rd takeaway. It wasn't something I was directly confronted with, but it got me thinking about it, and that's why it's such a high takeaway. By the way, these are in no particular order. Number 4, international border crossings require flexibility. It adds a layer of complexity that can absolutely derail your plans. I had absolutely no issues in either of my international crossings. When I went to the vehicle backup situation, it made it a little bit easier and better. A cyclist would have been stranded in the ferry crossing situation. We already talked about that. But I do think that it's important that when you are crossing borders that you know some other options as well. Sometimes I've heard horror stories of them being closed, of long lines at one, but not at others. It's good to have some contingency situations there. I don't know what kind of alternative options could have been available for me to cross the border. Like I said, train, one-way car rental, things like that. I just think that you've got to make sure that you've got some additional flexibility built in, and I really didn't have that. I think I just went with, other people did this ferry and other people did this, so this must be cool, right? And we all know how that ended up working out. Number 5, e-bikes excel at the twice the speed, half the effort theory. I was very consistently, once I got the bike working, maintaining 20 plus miles per hour with a real moderate effort and going against really big headwinds and all sorts of things. It really is a fantastic feeling to be able to ride so effortlessly like that at those speeds. And that's really the whole reason why I got into this whole e-bike thing, so that I can expand how I do this cycling. This didn't work out the way it was supposed to, but I think it reinforced to me as I was going around all sorts of parts of Canada and New York, that this is the right idea. And I'm really excited about all of that. Number 6, shoulder season has trade-offs. Little did I know that late May would be shoulder season, but I should have realized a bunch of things. Being down here in the DC area, further south, Memorial Day weekend in the US, that's summer. It's hot down here by that point. Up in the direction where I was cycling, it's treated like that, at least on the New York side of the border. But boy, it sure as heck felt like mid-spring in terms of just how people were going about their day to day. Part of that is, of course, that there's no Memorial Day in Canada. It was just Monday. At the same time, the touristy stuff wasn't quite open yet. And that was great for me because I had a lot more solitude, which I tend to like on these types of rides. I wasn't like shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of tourists like I was expecting. But at the same time, a lot of stuff wasn't really open yet. And that was particularly true on Wolf Island. The restaurant was just sort of thinking about getting ready. And even though I had some great conversations, especially about that $50 Canadian bill, potentially maybe being scratch and sniff maple syrup, it feels like I got trolled. It feels like I got trolled. Anyways, the idea of it not being quite as open just didn't occur to me. And I think that if I was to go now, I'll bet you all the places that I went to would be much more crowded, much more stuff going on. And that's a trade-off. If you want the cooler weather and the solitude, you go when I went. If you want more stuff going on, you go in late July, early August, and just enjoy that element of things. That amusement park on Toronto Island definitely would have been open. You know, the one with the IP problem? Yeah, that one. Number 7, battery management is both psychological and practical. Having 2 batteries totally eliminated range anxiety for me and changed my entire riding approach. That was because I knew I was nowhere near ever going to be burning through an entire battery in anything that I was doing. Even I think on my longest day, which was the second Wolf Island day, when I really did a big perimeter of the whole island and checked out all sorts of other stuff, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was going into higher e-assist levels than I normally would have without even thinking about it. And that's freeing and nice for these shorter kind of days. And for an adventure like this, where you're hauling around stuff by vehicle and you don't have to have your gear on you, that's really nice. And I like that. Although having done a subsequent adventure where it wasn't that type of a situation, it's nice to be all contained, all self-contained. I really like that element of it. So battery management is nice. Having the 2 batteries, I should say, is really nice for that peace of mind. I'm glad I've done it. As I talked about earlier, have to figure out the weight situation and the distribution and all of that, but we'll get there. We'll get there for sure. Number 8, flip side of the same coin, vehicle supported adventures have their merit. I was concerned that this series was going to be not that great. That as a podcast, it wasn't going to be that interesting. I cut a lot. I kept probably too much, but I also cut a lot because it's a lot of me just kind of rambling away. So from a podcast perspective, I hope it was interesting. I've been getting good feedback, so that's really good. But let's go to the kind of the cycling elements of all this. Look, if you're a purist, I can totally understand. I'm a purist. I prefer self-supported bicycle touring, period. Which isn't to say that supported tours, sag wagons and stuff like that don't have their merit. It's just what I've always done, what I've tended to lean to, including getting to an airport, taking the bike out of the bag, folding bag into my panniers, and then riding off, and then riding to another airport. You know, that's great. I love all of that. But the vehicle supported adventure is perfectly great. It allows you to get the best of both worlds. It allowed me to be able to do this trip, which again was a memorial trip, and to not have to just say, oh, I guess we're not doing this. It allowed me to have the flexibility to be able to do the kind of adventuring that I wanted to do in this hybrid way. I got to do all the cycling in the important places. I think about cycling in and around Niagara Falls. That was really special to be able to cover all of the ground from the hydro area upstream on the Niagara River all the way down to the Horseshoe Falls. That was just great. And with the e-bike, it was even better because, as you experienced with me, there's quite a hill from down there right about at river level up to where my hotel was. And so it ended up working out really well. And I've done kind of stuff like this before. I'm sure I'm going to be doing more of it. I've got another big, very car-related adventure coming up very soon, in fact, that's going to take me out west. And it's a full-fledged cross-country road trip with my dog. I may not even bring a bike with me because the bike might actually be more of an impediment to that particular type of an adventure. And so I think of it in a bunch of different ways, that all bike is good, hybrid is good, and even doing some adventures without a bike from time to time can be pretty good. So it just all depends on what you're trying to do. But I really do think that a vehicle-supported adventure has its merits. And you may be hearing more of them on this particular show because my new vehicle gives me some interesting flexibility in terms of camping and moving the bike from place to place. So I'm intrigued with that, and I'll share more of that in the future. Number 9, memorial rides or meaningful rides, or however you want to put them, can evolve. Despite the fact that I did not complete the original plan as I had planned it, the whole spiritual goal of honoring my dad through circumnavigating Lake Ontario and having a bicycle involved, going to meaningful places, was all there. And thinking back to that very first day when I'm driving past those apple orchards and unlocking that memory of him and I camping on the shores of Lake Ontario many, many years ago, that alone was worth it right there. And I'm not a hugely sentimental person, but I like the idea of linking these rides to things. My 2014 ride was a hat tip to my grandmother when she passed earlier that year. And so I tend to do adventures as a part of my, coping process, my, dare I say, grieving process. And it works for me. And I thought that even though this didn't go quite the way that I wanted, you know what? Me and my dad didn't go quite the way we wanted very often either. So maybe it was just perfect. Maybe it was exactly the way it was supposed to be. In a lot of ways, as I mentioned, with the ferry situation and all the other things that went on, this was just meant to be the way that it was. And it was a really memorable trip. And I'm really glad that I documented and shared it with you. So do those things that are meaningful, do those memorial rides. They can be really special. And this one certainly was. Number 10. Equipment confidence takes time and experience. I was about ready to break up with the e-bike. In fact, I think I said something along those lines that I had no confidence in that bike at all when the magnet situation came about. I was like, I can't trust this. And then when I realized what exactly it was, and it had a simple explanation, and there was no other situation with it. It was built right. I did a good job. It worked. It was just something that kind of flopped off, which was a completely rational thing that could happen. It was just on with double-sided tape, which is what came with the motor. So I've actually improved on that, and I don't think that's going to end up happening again. But the confidence level on things definitely took a giant hit. And then once I got to the solution and realized what happened, the confidence came right back. And then riding that bike throughout the rest of the trip, the confidence really returned. So shakedown rides, knowing your bike, all of those things are so important. And having just done another adventure on a different bike, I might as well tell you, I did it on the Safari, the regular old acoustic Safari, the bike that has been probably featured on this show more than anything else. Man, it's funny when you're on a bike that you know and trust and everything like that. It's a different vibe. The rim brakes that I know how to adjust, the shifting that worked properly, all of that. It was just a different experience. And I think that I need to grow to trust the e-bike a little bit more, although I may be doing something radically different, as I mentioned earlier with that. In any event, I think confidence with your equipment does take time. It takes experience with knowing how it works. I got to figure out disc brakes really badly. And so that's another thing I'm going to be working on, I think, in the fall and the winter. That's just going to be something I'm going to be doing. It's going to take time. It's going to take experience. And then I'll get the confidence back on all of that. So that was 10. All right. Those are the 10 things. I do have a bonus insight, and that has to do with Toronto Island. What a delightful freaking place that was. I think that's the kind of discovery that you can make on a bike tour that just makes you feel like sometimes things are just meant to be discovered in a particular way. And I made it seem like that I was interested in, oh, wow, what a great lifestyle, suggesting maybe I would want to move there. And listener Jackie McCullough, hello, Jackie, sent in a great little article about how hard it is to get a house or to purchase a house or rent a house on that island. It was really a fascinating read. There's a gigantic wait list. You have to live there. There's no short-term rentals, it says. Well, I have a short-term rental, but I think that the difference was that it was a room or a portion of a person's house. They lived in that same house. I think that's the only reason that could be pulled off. You couldn't purchase a home and rent it out without living there, is my best guess based on my experience here. But what a really special experience it is for those folks to be really within a few minutes of one of the greatest cities in the world. I'm here to say Toronto, Canada is just one of my favorite places in the world. But to live in this bucolic, amazing space that I think during the summers just must be one of the greatest places on earth. I loved it at 50 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy and raining, where people were all complaining how cold it was. I was like, perfect. The winters must be really fascinating there. It just was a really special place, and certainly a place that I intend to return to. And I knew that it was going to be good. I don't think I knew how much it was going to stick with me after the fact. Yeah, really interesting thing. And also, thanks to Jackie, I know how incredibly difficult it would be to be able to actually end up living in a place like that, because there is a line, and it's a lot of Canadians, a lot of Torontonians who really would like to do that. And I'm positive they would be in line way ahead of me. So I think the odds of me being able to do that are slim to none. But bonus insight, Toronto Island. What a great place. I definitely will be going back there again for sure. So folks, that is a takeaways episode for the Lake Ontario 2025 adventure. Different than we thought. Not as bikey as I would have liked, but I still got in some biking. Got some really interesting adventures in there. Saw some interesting places. It's almost a trial run for a ride I would like to do someday, but I think that we've got to solve for that ferry situation, which might mean that we time shift when it happens. It's not a spring type of ride. It's probably a fall type of ride. And then I'm going to make double sure that ferry is still running. Will we see this in 2026? Maybe, but it's definitely on my list of a possibility to do the way that I had originally intended. But just because it didn't work out the way that I wanted to doesn't mean that it wasn't a great adventure and one that I'm going to really cherish for many years to come. It was special as a memorial ride. It was special as an experience to just see all of the cities and towns around the lake. And it's the kind of adventure that I'm really looking forward to repeating in other unique ways down the line and sharing with you. So that's that. Next time, we are going to be getting into a couple of interesting things. I've got a really interesting interview coming up with some folks that have something to say about your sunscreen. Yes, your sunscreen. And then we're going to be pivoting right into the next adventure, which, as I'm sitting here, has already happened. And let me tell you, it is going to be a heck of a podcast. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to share it with you. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.